I'm very fortunate to represent a very diverse community, and I have Korean Americans in my community. And as a result of the Korean War, some Americans of Korean descent were separated from their families in North Korea. And I'm working on a bipartisan basis with Congresswoman Grace Ming from New York to try to put more focus on this and to encourage the administration of the President Biden's administration to put more focus and emphasis on this and try to reunify families, Korean families here in the United States with families in North Korea. I think that passage last year shows that the U.S. House of Representatives is taking this seriously, and I'm proud to represent my community and work on a bipartisan basis to represent the people, the citizens that I have the privilege of representing, to try to address this issue and send a message to the Biden administration. They need to take this issue seriously because there are families out there that want to know, that don't even know if their family members are alive, and that's true for North Koreans as well as for American Koreans. And this legislation, again, is an effort by myself and other members of Congress to emphasize to the Biden administration that they need to take the human rights violations that are transpiring in North Korea seriously, and that we need to advocate for the human rights of those people in North Korea who are having their rights violated. I think the relaxation on sanctions is purely up to the North Koreans. I mean, their actions are driving, the decision for sanctions. That is not a decision the United States enters into lightly, or any country really. The sanctions are not economically advantaging the country that's imposing those sanctions. It's actually a disadvantage to impose them. So it's the actions of the person that's being sanctioned for what, in this case, North Korea. Their human rights violations or pursuit of nuclear weapons that are destabilizing to the entire region, and obviously, horrible for the people that are experiencing those rights violations. A very belligerent regime in Pyongyang right now, and I think they respect force, and they respect the Americans' willingness to defend South Korea. And actually, as a Marine on active duty, I actually participated in joint U.S. South Korean exercises, and I think that's an important way that we defend a democracy and keep the North Korean, the Kim regime from conducting offensive operations. And they have conducted minor terrorist operations, in South Korea, in the waters off South Korea, for decades. And so, I think you've got to take a pretty hard stance against that kind of aggression to keep it from getting out of hand. So I'm certainly a supporter of making sure that the United States is a guarantor of the South Koreans' right to continue to exist as a free and democratic society. They're much more in control of their own destiny than I think they give themselves credit for. If the Kim regime opened up, if they stopped repressing people's rights, and I think that they had a freer society, the sanctions and stop pursuing nuclear weapons, the sanctions would be lifted, and there'd be a lot of trade and development for North Korea. But they continue to choose not to do that. They continue to have a belligerent stance. They continue to pursue nuclear weapons. They continue to violate the human rights of their own citizens. And so you end up in this very, and I understand, Korea is a very unique place where you have Congress saying we need a special envoy to work on family reunification for a war, for an armistice that was signed in 1953. I mean, it is, it was a long time ago. That the armistice was signed, and we're still, and again, the United States, would prefer that the Korean Peninsula was a place of peace. Would prefer that there were human rights that were honored for the North Korean citizens. I would prefer not to have to ask for this envoy, but the North Korean regime, the Kim regime, is making the choices that's compelling the United States to take the path that it's taking.